All right. So I have to say this is the first Master Gardener Coordinators Conference I've ever attended. And of all the things I thought I would learn about, drag culture was probably the lowest on the list. And now I realize what I've been missing all these years of going to the National Ag Agents Conference. So my presentation today is, I called it 3 birds, 1 stone. And even though I'm the state coordinator for Master Gardener Program in North Carolina now, that's a position I just started in January. So this is really from my 18 years as a county horticulture agent and being a Master Gardener coordinator at the county level. So, and it's really a strategy to get more for your effort. So it was a way I came up with to take my Master Gardener training and make more of it. So I wanted to increase access to a broader audience. I wanted to reach the same audience with the same effort, and I wanted to be more effective about how I was able to recruit and select and train Master Gardener volunteers. So I came up with this, 3 birds, 1 stone, kind of like the kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And this morning we learned that words matter, and I decided maybe a title that incites murder was not the best words to choose for my presentation, so I need to think about some other way. So I put the picture of the 3 sisters garden, so it's more like, getting more out of one space or one effort. And I've really come to appreciate, talking to many of you, how different the Master Gardener Volunteer Program is in each state. I knew it was different, but really had no idea how different. So I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of background about how North Carolina has Extension Master Gardener Program. So first, we have county centers in each of our 100 counties, and the Master Gardener Program is very county-based. So the county horticulture agent schedules Master Gardener. Everything pretty much happens at the county level. The state coordinator provides some resources, some policies, things like that, but they schedule their own training. The horticulture agent often is covering both consumer and commercial horticulture, working with Master Gardener volunteers, and pretty often other ag areas as well. So pretty much it's usually the traditional is the 3-hour lecture style class, maybe not quite death by PowerPoint, but that type of thing with a minimum of 40 hours of training. And this is usually over 12 to 16 weeks, meeting once a week consecutive. So, it really ties up a big chunk of time for the agent, often in the spring. So this is usually scheduled late winter and spring. And it works. We have over 4,000 Master Gardeners in North Carolina, so it's working, obviously, but there are some issues around having training this way. So it does reduce access to diverse audiences, and I realize there's all kinds of assumptions around if you increase access, you're going to increase diversity, but it's a starting point. If you can make something more accessible, that's kind of like the very first step to increasing diversity. Because really only those people who are available in the daytime can attend and who can dedicate, the time to that long-term training. And it's really time intensive for the agent. So what that often means is they don't have time to do classes for homeowners, then they're also doing stuff for landscapers, pesticide applicators, as well as do Master Gardener training. So in a lot of our counties, the only real effort to offer classes in consumer horticulture is Master Gardener training. So your only option if you want to take some of those classes is to become a Master Gardener. And these classes often are, focused on just that sharing of information. So the agent's just standing up there telling you all the information, you're absorbing it, but there's not a lot of skill building built into that just kind of 3-hour class. And we end up with wonderful people in our Master Gardener program, but very typical of a lot of states. White women who are retired or else of means and they don't have to work. And because a lot of people are really interested in learning about horticulture, but they know what Master Gardener training is, but they're not familiar that it's a volunteer program for extension. Lots of people sign up for the Master Gardener program, but they're really just coming to it to learn more for their own yard. I just want to learn this so I can take care of my yard. And, they don't have a lot of intention to stay on as a volunteer. So what happens is you lose a lot of people. You might have a big class, 20, 30 people, for most of our counties would be a big class, except for our really urban counties. But then a certain percent of them never complete that internship. So they never really actually become a master gardener. They just took it as a gardening class. And this can really hurt the morale of your existing master gardeners, kind of lead to a downward spiral of the other people that were in the class. And like, you know, we've never seen those 10 people that took the class with us and they're not volunteering, why should I? And that can be really disappointing for the agent, and reduces the return on your effort. So it's kind of like this bucket. You as the agent are just pouring everything into this bucket and it's, you know, it's leaking out. You can never get it full with volunteers. So as an agent, I was trying to think, how can I get people who really want to be volunteers in my Master Gardener program? How can I offer classes for the public without having to teach twice as much? You know, how can I have my volunteers feel more comfortable with doing things like identifying plants and diagnosing plant problems? So the approach I came up with is to sit down and look at what's taught in the Master Gardener curriculum and divide it into two categories. Both just that kind of foundational gardening knowledge, which a lot of homeowners want, the kind of what is a perennial? When do you plant different kinds of vegetables? You know, where is the best place to plant, you know, certain type of plant, or why do we prune at this time of the year? Things like that. So just kind of foundational knowledge versus the skills that volunteers need. So that's really the how-to, you know, how to interpret a soil test report and help somebody figure out what they need to do with those results, or how to look at damage on a plant and figure out what could have caused it. So those volunteer skills really focused on problem solving and how to find research-based information. You know, having volunteers bring their smartphone or their tablet or their laptop with them to class and using it in class to find the right information, the research-based information, as well as communicating with clients and learning some teaching strategies. So we're preparing the volunteers to be educators. So these two series, I set it up as two series. So the background knowledge, the kind of foundational knowledge, I became the extension gardener classes or the extension gardener course. And those were open to everybody, but they were a prerequisite if you wanted to be a master gardener volunteer. So you had to do those extension gardener classes first. So that gave me as an agent the opportunity to kind of get to know these people, to get to know, are they dedicated? Are they going to show up to training? Because another issue is, you know, people sign up for Master Gardener program and then only come to half the classes. You know, and lets them get to know extension as well and say, is this a good fit for me? Are these the type of things I learned? Do I want to support this? Those classes were usually around 2 hours, kind of lecture style, but then we would do a lot of polling with response cards and question and answer. I'd have master gardeners there, bringing in samples, and would try to get a master gardener to at least share a little bit at each class, to co-teach. People could choose, so you could just take one extension gardener class, you could take you could take all of them. And I usually offered those in the late winter, spring, when the general homeowners were very interested, and the kind of home gardeners were very interested in learning about gardening. My next step was going to be to offer it online, but then I took the state position. So when I was there in Chatham County, I offered each class twice. I offered it in the morning and I offered it in the evening. So I'd usually do a Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. Room was already set up and ready to go. And I was going to record them and then offer them where people could take it at their own pace. And I did do an extension gardener certificate if you attended all 6 of the classes that were part of the extension gardener certificate. And I made that a prerequisite for applying to the Master Gardener program. So it's kind of pre-training. It's that first part of Master Gardener training. So the certificate classes were the really popular things. Lots of people want to learn about growing fruits, growing vegetables, growing herbs, establishing and caring for lawns, and then the landscape plants. We did one on herbaceous and one on woody plants. And for each class, I would create a resource page on our county portal, which would include the slides and a handout and links to lots of other extension publications. So this became a resource for people who, when they became master gardeners, if they could remember, yeah, we did talk about it in that class, they could go and retrieve that information or find sources of research-based information. So that was Extension Gardener. That was for everybody. So the other part was, I called Extension Master Gardener Training. And it was for those people who applied to the Master Gardener program and got accepted. So this was after they had paid the fee and attended an orientation session, and they were committed to the volunteer program. It was very clear. We talked about Master Gardener program at each of the Extension Gardener classes, and that if you were going to apply and go on, you were doing that to be a volunteer, and what it meant to be a volunteer, and having Master Gardener volunteers at each of those classes. So these were hands-on. So the Master Gardeners were going to get their hands dirty in these classes. This I taught in the fall. And I did teach it as daytime classes from, we actually did 10 to 3 and we had an hour lunch break. So it was a pretty big commitment. The lunch break turned out was just wonderful for creating connections and allowing the Master Gardeners, the new trainees, to get to know each other. And it was very interactive, lots of activities with that focus on problem solving. And as I said, bringing a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop, and we had some extra ones, having them break into teams, having them work on common questions we get and find answers, share how they found that answer, things like that. So these were the classes that made up the Master Gardener training. You know, we did one whole class on finding research-based information, then soils and nutrition, which was really focused on assessing your soil and the soil test report and how to figure out which nutrients to apply, botany and plant ID. The diagnosing plant problems, we had 2 classes, one with a focus on diseases and one on insect pest, integrated pest management, weed management. And then the final exam was very practical and collaborative. So a lot of people I found were really scared of the final exam. Some people, you know, said that's what kept them from joining the Master Gardener program. So I called it a final review, and it was you know, they did get the test paper and the answer sheet. But I had 10 questions that they answered individually. And those questions were about the Master Gardener program and extension and the volunteer opportunities available to them, because I wanted to be sure people understood that. So I wanted them to answer those questions individually. But all the other questions, they could confer with each other. They could consult any resources except for me as the agent. There were lots of samples. So there were, you know, many of the questions had a sample associated with that they would have to go look at, and they talk about it. And there were a couple of extra credit questions that were team questions that they came up with an answer and then shared back with the group. But I wanted to mention specifically the first class on finding research-based information. That, you know, really focused on using things like search.extension.org rather than just Google, or if you were going to use Google or a search engine, how to limit your search so that you were coming from sources, the .edu sources. And it also served as a review of those Extension Gardener classes, because they took those in the spring. You know, they finished that up maybe in April or May, and now it's, you know, late August, early September. So it helped review that. So I had a bunch of questions that were common questions that we got in the office related to those Extension Gardener classes, and would have them work on them as a group and find the answer and give the answers back out to the group. So that reminded them that those resource pages were there, and they got to practice using things like search.extension.org. And we also spent some time on what's even reasonable for you to be expected to answer as a question, because a lot of questions that come in, you can never answer it the way it's asked to start with or with the evidence they give you. So I had quite a few pictures like these where I'd show them a picture like this one up top and say, what is that bug? You know, can you tell me what that bug is? You know, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know. Some people would try to guess, and then somebody would eventually say, what is it? I was like, I don't know. It's just little black dots on a wall that are blurry. Nobody can figure out what that is from that picture. That's not even something that ever, you know, you should ever be expected. So that would be a case where you would just say to the client, you know, we need a clearer picture. We can't tell based on the picture you sent. So here's an example of a clear picture. Does anybody recognize these insects? Kudzu bugs, yeah. So those of you from the South probably know the kudzu bugs. So we spent quite a bit of time even talking about what you should answer and what's reasonable and what information you need and what questions you need to ask to get that information.
You lost them with kudzu books.
I know. So pulling everybody back in, putting it all together. So this is what becoming a master gardener looked like in Chatham County, North Carolina, when I was the agent. We would start off the year with some information sessions. So these were, I would hold 3 or 4, and they were scheduled at different times. They were sometimes part of another bigger event. And that was just a time for people to come. We had like a little 20-minute presentation, and we always had master gardeners there, so you could talk to actual master gardeners and not just hear it from me. And what is extension? What's the master gardener program? Why you should join, how to be a master gardener, and what type of volunteer opportunities are available to you. So that was the first thing. Then this was before the extension gardener classes. We would also announce the extension gardener schedule there. And so people would take the extension gardener classes. If they took all of them, they'd get their certificate. And if they got the certificate and wanted to become a volunteer, then they could apply to the program. And then they would attend orientation. So orientation would usually be held in mid to late May after the extension gardener class is finished. And that's where they learned more in depth about extension, history, the policies. We reviewed the code of conduct for master gardeners. They got registered for our Master Gardener intranet site, which is where they log all their hours and are in the directory. And this is kind of where they committed. They paid the fee at this point. And at that point, it became non-refundable because I started spending that money. So, I wanted to make sure that they were very sure that that's what they wanted to do. So that's in May, and I already said that the Master Gardener training classes didn't start until the fall. So what about summer? Aren't you going to lose these people? Well, we have a lot of things going on in summer, a lot of things that were led by Master Gardener volunteers that we really encourage these new students to get involved in. They were optional, but we wanted them to feel very welcome. There were some webinars that we broadcast at the office. They were invited to attend. Garden visits were a really popular thing where individual master gardeners would host a tour of their yard that would focus on learning and the experiences and how they develop that garden. We weren't looking for showcase gardens. We'd have some propagation workshops, which a couple of our master gardeners would help lead. They were very popular. And we invited them to do like volunteer in a demonstration garden, but we had to be really selective about what we allowed them to volunteer in because they hadn't finished training yet, but that was one. So that helped them to get to know each other and start to get to know the other volunteers in the program before they were just dumped into training. So then in the fall, the training was held. They took the final exam, and then of course they had a year to finish their internship, at which point they were a Master Gardener intern, and finished the internship. They were a full-fledged certified Master Gardener volunteer, and this is a cake one of our volunteers made for their celebration. So, building on so what from yesterday, so what did this mean for me as the agent in Chatham County? So I was only there for 4 years. There was no Master Gardener program when I started there, so I started it, and this is how I started it, based on my previous experience in other counties. And I was really happy, and I've been sharing this with other agents who are starting to put it in place in their counties. And first, the extension gardener classes were very well attended. Chatham County is still considered fairly rural. This is a big county, but the population is only 60,000. And we would get between 25 and 80 people at each session. So like the fruits class was a big one. We'd had 70 at the night class and 80 at the daytime class, which was really good attendance in our county. And a lot of people, we did the surveys, they learned stuff, they intended to change behaviors. But most importantly, even for a lot of people who didn't come to the classes, just knowing we were offering that made them feel better about extension. They really felt like we were trying, since we were offering things that weren't just in the daytime. And that used to be a common thing to get questions about. Why do you only ever offer stuff for in the daytime? Why do you have to be a master gardener to learn anything? So this did a lot for our public image. And I did see an increased diversity, especially in age. And the night classes, of course, would typically be most diverse. But the daytime classes too, we'd get mostly retired people, but not always. And it helped me considerably with my workload because I wasn't trying to teach separate classes for the public versus separate and master gardeners. So I was reaching more than one audience with the same effort. And it spread it out over the year instead of just my whole spring being taken up with this. Recruitment increased because people would take the extension gardener classes. They'd learn about the master gardener program, and maybe, you know, and it's like, next year I'm going to apply. That's what I'm going to do. Screening, it helped because I got to know these people during the extension gardener program, and it really helped them understand that if they went on to be a master gardener, it was all about the volunteering. And then training as well, having those longer classes focused just for the master gardener skills, helped them to practice and gain confidence, and they weren't just likely to come ask me when a question came in. And ultimately that led to greater retention of volunteers compared to other counties where I had led the program. And of those who completed master gardener training, 100% completed their internship. And in the 2 years where this model was running, I had near 100% retention 1 year to the next. And I thought it was really encouraging that 2 people we lost because they moved to different places, but both of them became master gardeners where they moved, you know, so they were really dedicated to the program. And so to finish up, I was so inspired yesterday by our pathway of change. I decided to put one together for this. So having the extension, I did this last night, yeah, having the extension gardener classes, you know, opened it up to a more diverse audience, and you can basically read through it, but it's pretty much everything we talked about. But ultimately what it's ending up with long-term is, for social, we're getting broader reach in the community. For health and environmental, because our program is reaching more people, we're having greater impacts in those areas. And economic, to me, this greater return on investment, the investment in my time as the agent, is coming from having our master gardeners being more effective and competent, from increasing volunteer retention and reducing agent burnout. You know, I think a lot of times in this kind of stuff, we only looking at our clients and we forget about ourselves. So I wanted to build that in.